Oh, there we go. We're live. Okay, we did it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of This is Learning. Oh, wow, it is Friday, isn't it? Holy cow. We're here to talk about technology things with Christina Monti. Monty?
Mm-hmm.
Monty. Monty.
Yeah.
There you go. From PayPal. Christina, do you want to just give yourself a little introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Christina Monti. Obviously, I had an amazing intro. I am leading developer relations at PayPal. And if you were to ask me what that means, I will say that I don't have probably what most would consider the typical. I'm sitting on the product side of the house. So I've got my friends in the engineering team that are the DevRel advocates that are into the technology. So I'm helping them to lead from a strategy perspective and leading like the roadmap vision, all of the fun stuff that most people don't necessarily want to think of. They just want to do the thing. So I'm taking over on that side of the house.
Sweet, sweet. We also have Deep on our panel here. How's it going, Deep?
Yes, was running late, but joined. So
Not
it's a Friday. So
Christina, you're right on time.
yeah.
And then it was StreamYard that was late. Okay, so we are here today to talk about voices of developers. Voice of developer. What's the program actually called?
Yeah, voice of developer is what I coin it. If I were to say like what's the high level, I think there's oftentimes within organizations, we always focus on the quantitative data. I like to bring in the qualitative where I'm providing a space for developers within the organization to provide feedback on our products and the solutions that we're building and the experiences that they're having so that we're keeping them top of mind and ensuring that while we're building products, we're listening actively to our developers that are facing challenges within our ecosystem.
So you touched on a couple things there that they can provide feedback on. One was on the product itself, and then one was on like how you're going about building it, kind of thing. Like, we don't like building it this way, but we like building it that way. So are they providing feedback on what the product does, or the quality of the product, or like what kind of feedback are they being like, no, I don't like that button being there, and I think it should be over, like that kind of stuff? Or what kind of feedback do they give? Or do you want, I guess, this question?
I want to focus on both. I think I would say the latter is more important for me. It's their experience building. I think that oftentimes we get lost in the shuffle of the day-to-day. And I will say, like, PayPal is a B2B, B2C company, right? And B2D has not necessarily been top of mind. So things like I need multiple different languages. I need to be able to test without friction. I need to be able to get onboarded quickly and through the process so I can move on to the next integration or solution. I want to make sure that experience is optimized and has as less friction as possible. So I tend to focus on the experience of the developer and the roles that they're playing within that solution building. I think that there's sometimes maybe like misunderstandings. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. But developers I love developers. And I love them because there's so much complexity. Like, there's so many things that they do in a day that I don't think people really understand. And right. So I want to up level that complexity and have people understand and empathize that, like, if I'm working on debugging something and it takes me 3 hours, but then I couldn't figure it out, so I move on to the next, I still have to go back to that thing I was working on for 3 hours and still try to figure it out. I can't just let it go to the wayside, right? So I love to be able to provide that kind of feedback so that people just feel and ingest that experience so that they can keep that top of mind when they're saying, okay, well, I'm going to build a new API, and my API is going to have, these scenarios, and these scenarios should be easy for a developer to debug in a little bit of time so that they can move on to the next.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, totally. So you're kind of like I actually don't know if this is a job title, so maybe it's a real thing, but like an internal dev rel, like the developer relations, but internally.
Yeah, there's definitely there could be debate. So we'll leave it at that. There's always debate, but there could be debate.
Maybe advocate would be a better term. Oh, did we lose you, Christina? We have lost Christina. I'm sure she will be back.
Yeah.
And just like that, I'm back.
It's Friday.
It's Friday.
Oh, that's lovely. That was a pause for a quick break. So if you want to do like a little advertising in the middle, you could definitely do that. That's a good spot. Anyways, so I was saying, I think that there is opportunity, like both externally and internally. I personally believe that your external developer experience is a reflection of your internal developer experience. So it is important and it should be prioritized to focus both on your internal developer experience plus your external developer experience, because if you're trying to go to market with a developer product, your internal developers are your community. So if they're
the curse
having a hard time,
the curse of Friday the 13th, I tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
On that?
A little bit, but we got the gist of what you were saying, because when you're building developer products, like the people building them are your target demographic, right? So if they're not happy, the people you're selling to aren't going to be happy either. So definitely a good point. So we have a question here from Santosh. Going back to the actual program, Voice of Developers, is this a program for internal devs or devs consuming the APIs? I'm guessing it's for the internal ones, right? And then that would kind of like have an effect.
No, I'm bringing in everybody from the outside. You use our APIs. I want you to be able to have a space in our platform to be able to voice your challenges. One of the things that I will say that I've learned in my tenure, developers just want to be heard. So if you, for an example, are saying, hey, here's a feedback form, tell us how this API experience was. Like, how often are you actually going to put that back to the product team if you don't know what's going to happen? Like, I don't know what's going to happen with this, so I'm not going to put any feedback. Like, it just sucked. And then I'm going to go to the community. And if it was such a bad experience, I'm going to tell everyone that was the worst thing I've ever had to deal with. Like, I'm not even going to give you feedback. It's not even worth it. Right. So I try to provide this opportunity for developers externally to help them understand that I'm listening, and I want all of our product and engineering teams to listen. In these sessions, I do bring our product and engineering teams. So you're sitting with our API owners, you're sitting with our product teams, you're sitting with our dev experience team. And this also goes all the way up to our CTO, our SVPs, our VPs, because we need to actively listen to developers, and we need to know that the solutions we're building are scalable and it's not creating a bad experience.
Totally, because at the end of the day, it's the developers or the the technical lead of some sort on the team that's making the decision of what technologies to use, right? Like, I'm the CTO of my company. Until I actually had a real product team, for a while, it was like me and like 2 other people, right? I was making all the decisions, being like, we're going to use this technology and we're going to use this one because they're easy, right? Like, I've never integrated with PayPal, so I have no concept. But, I went through 2 different payment processors, and then we went to Stripe, and I was like, oh my God, why doesn't every company just build like Stripe does? Because it took me 1/10 of the time. It was easy. It was well explained. But then you find these services and you're like, how does anybody integrate with this or scale with the solution? So like, I commend you for really bringing that feedback back, because at the end of the day, you're selling to the developers, even if you're not directly selling to developers and it's like a business service. Like if a developer needs to integrate with it, you are selling to the developers because they're the ones that need to do the work. It's not the business people or the growth team or the sales, right? They don't need to do the work. Yeah.
Mm-mm. Yeah. So, and I think I do have an opinion that in the last 2 years, I have seen, and mind you, I've been at PayPal for 5. So I've been here for a good chunk of time. I understand that the way the world is today is not necessarily how it was two years ago, right? COVID thrusted us into needing to be online. And I always say, like, who is getting us online? Developers. Like, I mean, like, let's talk reality. Developers are getting us online. Unless you're building a very self-service like button, but still, who's under that? A developer. A developer is building it. So the developer community, in my mind, is extremely influential because, to your point, you're not going to tell a merchant or a customer, hey, let me go with this solution because it's going to take me a month and a half to do it, when I could do it in like 2 days. Why would I tell someone, like, I mean, it's just, that's the reality. So developers are extremely influential. We have to prioritize their experience and make sure that it's optimized so that we can ultimately help them make the decisions that ultimately like are driving the business impact.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think part of the, like, what I found is if you can find some developers that also understand, they don't need to understand business, obviously, right? Like, I don't even understand business for the most part. Like, I get the gist of it, but I'm not a business person, right? I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm not a business person. There's a difference. But like, some developers get that, like, it would be great if we could like build the Cadillac version of this, but it doesn't matter if you have the Cadillac if you don't have a company that's around. So getting it done quick, getting it done right enough for the stage you're at is just so key. And having developers that understand that and then know what tools to use too, right? That's how the other part of it is, like, sometimes you just don't know what tool to use, even though there's the perfect tool out there for you. So that's where this external community and, DevRel and Dev Advocate, whatever words you want to use and titles you want to give, right? Really coming.
Whatever we're calling it today.
2 years ago, I didn't know what DevRel was. I had no idea. I just got started in, talking to people on Twitter and getting involved and stuff like that, and it blew me away. I was like, "What? This is a thing."
It's interesting because, like, I love. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I could talk for days. I love DevRel, but I also love to advocate that DevRel isn't everyone. We all should encompass DevRel. We all should want to create an experience that is optimized and easy. Like, thinking of ourselves. If I'm a developer, I want to make sure I'm thinking of developers. And oftentimes I don't want to discredit the work that people are doing, because it's easy to just go through a user story and build to that spec and be done and move on. Like, it's easy. Yeah. But there's more, I think, to that. And that's why I'm a strong advocate that we shouldn't necessarily put the DevRel hat just on people that are sitting in DevRel. Everyone has that opportunity to be DevRel. If you love to make videos, if you love to do a blog post, if you love to talk in public, like, everyone has that opportunity. It's not, you don't have to be in the role to take on that persona.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. Right. And, it's not for some people, and that's totally fine. But the opportunity presents itself for anybody that wants it, which I think is great. Yeah.
And I always, like, it's funny because not for some people could be, again, we're debatable, right? In my space, I am trying to create a safe environment where, as a DevRel advocate, if you don't want to be on stage, if you don't want to write blogs, create our sample apps, do the things that are helping to, provide a different experience for developers. And that's okay too. Like that is part of the charter of DevRel, is like being creative with technology in such a way that is ultimately teaching others about and/or like providing a good experience. Like it's teaching and providing a good experience, right? Unblocking where you can. I mean, developers know the challenges more than anyone, more than me. And I'm like, if you need to be creative for 2 days and figure out why this isn't working and what you can do to solve it, like you do you, man. I am not gonna just be creative. And I think that's probably part of the challenge, is that DevRel sometimes isn't necessarily looked at as a creative space. And to be creative, it does not, it's not like putting in a block of code. Like you need to think about the story. You need to think about like the whole end to end of why you're doing the thing. So I do try to provide a space where people have that opportunity. And I am protective of that time in how I like talk about that with leaders, because it's not as easy or simple as people think.
No, I'm pretty lucky with my team. I got a couple of guys on my team that they don't want to be on stage. They don't want to be talking to people. But if we're investigating a new technology or we don't know how to do something, I'm like, okay, it's all you.
Yeah.
You go and figure it out. Love it. Yeah. We'll spend a couple of days figuring it out. And then they come back to us with like, samples and like storybooks built and like this, here's how you do it and the pros and cons of this way. And here's a README with like steps. And here's even some schematics that you can run so you don't need to do all the heavy lifting, right? And then like all of my developers can just use that, right? And they don't need to go through that same learning process of, okay, well, let's Google how to do X and then figure it out, right? So it's awesome. So Lars has a question here for you. Tell us more about your effects at PayPal. So like, what have you seen come from this, I guess, from this Voice of Developers program that you've implemented?
So from like there's going to be like some complexity in that answer, right? Because PayPal is extremely large. So I typically will have, it's funny. I'm a repetitious kind of person. So I have themes that I'm consistently seeing like in a year. And I know and understand that within large organizations, there are political plays at hand, right? You gotta play the game, right?
Yeah.
So with regards to like product and engineering, the efforts that have come out of it, I think that with the voice that I've had within the organization, I have been able to instill like that developers are important and we need to prioritize their experience. In addition to that, I think there's like the operational things that I try to influence. For example, if we're building a new feature for a merchant or a consumer, we need to think about what that developer experience is, and we need to think about it early on in the phase. So we cannot think about it when we're writing documentation. That is not the place where we're going to like get that experience optimized. So making sure that we have checks and balances within the organization early on in that product development or software development life cycle has been, it's challenging, but it pays off to get it upstream, right?
Okay. Yeah.
With the CTOs and like SVPs, I think that the efforts there are that they realize the importance of a developer. They are listening actively. And when I say like, I mean, there's been situations where I've done an interview and it went all the way up. I mean, it literally is being shared in SVP meetings as like, hey, we really need to prioritize this. We really need to listen to developers actively. And we need more of this. We need to be humble in the fact that our experience might not be great. And it's not a complaint. It's really an opportunity for us to improve. So I think I changed the narrative and ultimately helped to more or less like prioritize the developer in all conversations. It's funny because literally in every I can't tell you how many meetings I go to, but I go to so many meetings and I was like, what about the developers? Like literally, what about developers? I'd probably say that to my children nowadays. Like, what about the developers? Like, I say so much that.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Because at the end of the day, like you're saying, you got to think about it from the start, not when you're writing documentation, stuff like that, right? You're really just doing customer discovery. It's just you're not talking to the people using PayPal. You're talking to the people that are going to build for the people using PayPal. So it's just customer discovery. That's all it is at the core. You're just doing just the customer discovery on a segment of the business that isn't seen externally, I guess, from the users of the actual service. So
Yep.
just another stage of making sure you're building the product correctly, making sure you're getting product market fit. But instead of product market fit with, oh, do people want to process payments through PayPal? It's product market fit with, do developers want to use the product, right? Like if the product's not easy to use, not enjoyable to use, no developer's going to want to do it. But luckily, like you're mentioning, you got you might get feedback that says, it could be better, right? That's not to be taken badly. The fact that they're telling you that means that, like they would use it. They might still be using it, but they would love to see it improved so that they would keep using it and keep recommending it to be used. So that feedback loop is so important for sure.
I think like in order to build a community, you have to lead with that. You have to lead with like, I'm listening or we're listening. And ultimately that's how you get your community to start talking, right? And I am a huge advocate for listening without judgment. So I will hear a developer and the challenges that they're facing. And I don't take it, honestly, you could tell me I'm ugly and I'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. But like, I mean, I don't take feedback as judgment. I take feedback as something didn't work. And when I remove that emotion from the feedback and focus on why the person's saying what they're saying, I think that's the most important way to take in feedback, because it's not about what they're saying, it's why they're saying it. So why are they saying that it's so hard to debug just 10,001 error? And if they're saying it's so hard, why are we not fixing it? It shouldn't be hard. It should be super easy. I mean, there's no reason why it needs to be. We're not doing surgery here, folks. I mean, maybe we are, but I mean, we're not. Yeah.
Taking feedback is so important, and that's not something unique to, just talking with developers. Developers are very, pragmatic people, very analytical people, right? But at the end of the day, they're just people, and taking feedback, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, what vertical you're in. Feedback is feedback. We do the same thing with our customers, right? Like if they have a bad experience on Trellis, we do an offboarding meeting with them, like, give us it all. Tell us everything. And we just write it all down, right? Just everything. And then we're like, okay, let's figure out, what went wrong and what we know about it. Because, sometimes they're like, oh, this didn't work. And we're fully aware that it doesn't exactly work like that, right? But at the end of the day, developers are just people, and they want to be heard, right?
That's it. That's all. It's interesting to me. So one of the biggest aha moments for me within the last couple of years, I did a session with some interns that were building PayPal solutions. And the biggest aha moment for me was that in this session, I made a good experience for developers. We ultimately could cause and are the cause of imposter syndrome, meaning developers go to school, they learn, they are very extremely super smart, right? And if we describe our solutions, our APIs, our things without context, without details, without them coming along in that journey, they ultimately start to question their learning. It's like, do I really know how to code this? Like, maybe I don't know React. Maybe I don't know Java. Maybe I don't know C++. Like, what? Like, we can create imposter syndrome if we're not being upfront and honest. And that was like, from a people perspective, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is horrible. I don't like, it gives me chills thinking I'm creating imposter syndrome. Like, I do not want to be the source of a creation of imposter syndrome. We all have to go through that just in our daily lives. Like, and to think that you could be the creation of that, like, ugh, that scares me. I don't like it.
Oh yeah, 100%, right? Like, I think something that a lot of people forget or don't know when they come into the industry, right? Like, I suffer from imposter syndrome, but like, do I know some things really well? Yeah. Do I not even know what some things are? Totally, right? There's too much out there for everybody to know everything. It's literally impossible for you to know everything. So you can't assume, when, say, writing a documentation for a software API, don't assume everybody knows what, a REST endpoint is, or, an SSL certificate is, right? Like, it might seem super obvious to you, but who knows what that background is, right? Maybe they're a self-taught developer and they didn't go through school, but they managed to get a job, right? Like, great, good for them, but they might not have some of that background knowledge, right? There's too many cases of too many people becoming developers and just not having the same educational background for a variety of reasons, right? As the people writing the documentation. Yeah. So just be clear. Whenever I try to write like a tutorial, I do like little sample repos every so often, like, oh, using Angular and Nest to do this thing, right? Try to be like super duper clear, like, this is what this is, right? Whereas, like, some subset of Angular developers would look at that and be like, well, obviously, right? But you can't assume everybody knows what that is.
Yeah.
You just can't. And that's what I found makes a really good tutorial or guide, where it's like, here's a super simple concept, and I'm going to give you a little one-liner about it so that I can use it through the rest of the guide freely, and everybody knows what it is, right? So you don't lose part of that audience. And I think that makes really high-quality content for sure. Because there's a lot of things that I've had to go integrate with APIs. I'm like, what in the world is this? I have no idea what this thing means.
Right? Yeah. I quote often my friend Ian from Postman, because I was on a session with him and the thing he said was just like so resonating, and I consistently take it in our organization on a day-to-day basis. And it literally is my buzzword this year, or buzz
sentence.
Yes.
Buzz mantra.
My buzz something. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say, but he said once that we should treat all developers that are coming to your website as new developers. And that for me was like amazing, because I think I alluded to this before. Day to day, we just get so entrenched in like, well, did you go to college for 20 years? Did you learn on TikTok? Did you learn in 100 devs? Did you do front end? Did you do back end? Did you do full stack? Did you do InfoSec? Whatever it may be. We focus on the roles individually, and then we try to define and create experiences for that set of personas. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you think of someone as a net new, someone who's never been here before, it's the whole thing. It's end to end. It's not about just like, I need to provide an experience for a person who's been coding for 50 years. They just want a huge API reference and they're just going to go at it. That's great. But like, how many people are sitting in that bucket? I mean, we should really think of a holistic experience that includes the API reference that's really long and someone can do Control F, plus give a step-by-step. You're net new. We should be teaching. We should not be telling.
Yeah, exactly, right? And like, at the end of the day, the people using it are your customers, right? So why wouldn't you want to make it so that as many of your, call them your addressable market, are able to use your product as possible? Why are you like explicitly leaving out part of your addressable market because you're like, now they should know what that means, right? It's just a bad business decision at the end of the day, right?
I feel like some of that cultural though, like when you think of, I've been in technology for a long time, enough time to know that like there are some old school people that are like, I've been doing this for 50 years. Why don't you know this? Like you should have learned this in year one. And that for me, I think is where we become not inclusive, because then people start feeling as if they're inadequate and feeling as if they can't do the job. And then that becomes like this weird relationship where it's like, oh, I don't feel like I can voice my opinion because it's not 20-year seasoned, like, and so I don't know, there is a culture that needs to change around technology with regards to like, it should be a safe space for someone to come in year one and not know something. And it should be a safe space for someone at year 20 to say, you know, I appreciate your perspective. This is probably going to get you there better or in a faster way. Like I would love to see technology culture change in that way myself, just because I've seen the impacts of not being inclusive in that way. And it ultimately just is, it makes for a very challenging work environment. You don't feel like you can just ask a simple question and feel vulnerable. Like vulnerability is huge. You should be able to say, I need, you know, I don't know why this IP address isn't connecting. So can you tell me why? Like, I mean, yeah, I would love to see cultural change in technology myself.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people are working towards, but unfortunately there's some laggards, let's call them, that are, for lack of a better term, gatekeeping, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah,
that's unfortunate, but maybe if we all band together and we all like get our pitchforks with I don't know.
Get your pitchfork.
I mean, something.
Sure. Okay, one last question before we wrap up because we're a little bit over time. Lars wants to know, how do we reach out to the Voice of Developers? Do we have a link to it? Do we just tweet at you? What do we do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's, so I will say right now, just because of the maturity of the organization with regards to developers, we're definitely reactively listening more than we are proactively. I usually will, you know, you hate on us, I'm gonna come at you because I want to listen, I want to hear it, I want to feel the pain. So I will say that if you want to proactively, always come to me. My DMs are open. I'll give you my email. We'll just start this. Like we can definitely do that. In the future, we do have plans to be proactive in the fact that we want to create an opportunity for people to see. I want people to see our roadmap. I want people to understand where they can influence the roadmap. I want people to know that we're listening proactively and we have a space with feature requests and things like that. So we're working towards that, but right now it is a lot of reactive.
So just tweet really bad things about the PayPal API is what I'm hearing, right?
I mean,
with a
maybe just tweet them to me in like a DM. It's fine. That's the thing. Like I don't own, you know, I'm not going to lie when I say we get a lot of hate. Absolutely. But we want to hear it. We want to know why this is challenging. So I don't take it as a negative. I take it as a positive outcome that I can try to change based on someone's experience. So I mean, you know, I'm not going to stop people or tell people not to do it because that would be oppression of their voices. And I'm not for that. But I just want you to know we're listening. We are taking in. If you want to take a session and talk to our CTOs and have them listen to your opinion, we're here. I got you. Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show, chatting. It was really, we got into a lot of stuff there. It was really, really enjoyable, especially for Friday morning.
Yes, Friday
On the
the 13th, and we had a little advertisement in between. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Anything else you want to shout out before we finish up?
No, I just love my developers. So hopefully people can understand and hear that in my passion. I want to make sure that the developers are heard and we're listening, and that's a responsibility I take to provide that opportunity, especially in an organization like PayPal. I mean, it's hard to find someone. So I'm here, I'm listening.
Great. Well, I'm sure everybody that you get to work with appreciates that.
I hope so. Otherwise, they're not telling me.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right.
Okay,
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime. We'll have to chat again sometime soon. Thanks for everyone for showing up. Next episode is next Friday, the 20th. We're going to be talking about Nest.js and Prisma. Hope you can join us then. Thanks a lot, Christina, and have a good Friday.
Thank you.